What's up, y'all? This is Matthew from The Rim Review. The Rim Review is a page that offers in depth player analysis and gives nuance to the way that you watch basketball. In this series, we're going to be going over every single prospect in the upcoming 2026 NBA draft. And in today's episode, we're going to be looking at the senior out of Duke, Maliq Brown. When addressing Maliq Brown on the offensive end, he really is not an offensive player whatsoever. Talking about his strengths, he's primarily a playmaking big, and I know it might not be shown in the stat sheet as he only averaged 1.6 assists per game. However, 1.4, he had a field goal made to assist ratio of 1.43, which is really, really high. And he also makes just great reads in the splits. Another, part of his strengths is that he's really, really got great fundamentals and decisions in pick and roll. And he's a pretty solid lob threat when he's in the dunker and also as a cutter. Lastly, something that I think any team would love to have is that he is a very active offensive rebounder, and he's consistently in the fight trying to crash and get offensive rebounds. Talking about weaknesses, though, there are, a lot of them. I will say he really isn't a shooter whatsoever. He was 17% beyond the arc on 30 attempts this year. Over his 2 years at Duke, I think it was 21% on 42 attempts. And to be completely honest, he's just, he can't really create for himself whatsoever. And then additionally, sometimes it seems he's too unselfish. And as a result, it leads to some turnovers, which can kind of be shown by the unnecessary reads. And then I also want to mention he honestly struggles to consistently finish at the rim, and additionally he's just pretty slow going up and down the court. So a few quick examples, this one against Texas Tech, and we're going to start off like always in transition. And so the thing to point right here is that when he can and when he has that effort, we see right here, converts from defense a little steal, and then when he can and he puts the effort in, this is right out of a TV timeout, and so he can sprint to the rim and sprint ahead and get an easy bucket. And so there are times where he can do that, but then there are also times where he's just trudging down the court, and it's really, really hard. This example against TCU in March Madness, they ended up winning this one, but these are just losing plays for guys like Maliq Brown, where he gets a defensive rebound, tries to get an outlet, but it's just really forced, and a lot of these passes seem to be, forced. This is going to be the last example of transition scoring, and this is just a really, really simple steal. I know most of the examples I've done for bigs, what I love to see is if you're able to run ahead, steal. In this example, Robert McCray, a point guard for FSU, is mismatched on Maliq Brown, and so this is really, really easy for him to seal off, be patient at the post, and finish at the rim. As I've addressed, playmaking in my eyes is something that Maliq Brown does pretty well. I know on the stat sheet it might not show, as I said in the strength section, but there's plays like this where simply he's got a lot of strength and get a quick power dribble where you see right here, and then zips the ball to a corner for Dame Sarr. Beautiful assist. And I think those quick zip passes are just beautiful, and something that I don't really see a lot of bigs being able to do at a consistent level. This example, as I've talked about, split actions, if you don't know, could be anything. It could be simple pin down, whatever it may be. In this example, they're setting a chest or a flare screen. And so when I mean splits, I mean one guy is setting, in this example, a chest screen, and then based on the reads of these two defenders right here and right here, one is going to in reality slip and go to the basket. So in this example, you see Nick Kaminya setting a chest screen on Caden Boozer, and then Nick Kaminya slips, and that's just an easy action that Duke did at a consistent level. And in my eyes, I think Maliq Brown has really, really good instincts consistently. Same thing we see over and over again. In this example, it's a forced pass, but we see again a very similar split action chest screen, and this defender right here tries to fight over the screen because Isaiah Evans is such a elite shooter. And so eventually they do switch, but Maliq Brown kind of forces that because he read that number one on TCU is gonna be behind the play because he's fighting through that screen. And so it's a forced turnover, and he sometimes does that a lot. And so he just needs to work on it a little bit, but I will say a pretty consistent passer. And then one thing, when you've got a guy like Cameron Boozer, it's really easy, where simply all he needs to do, simple high-low, Maliq Brown's gonna flash up, and then easy pass to Cam Boozer, beautiful. Dribble handoff situations, something, again, really, really simple. This is, again, a playmaking, action where simply, they get a little pass to Maliq Brown at the wing, and then a simple dribble handoff, solid screen as well. Just a little additional part of his playmaking skills that he can do at a pretty consistent level. And I don't think, I will say, I think all you want in a guy like Maliq Brown that doesn't offer a ton on the offensive end is that you just need to screen and pass well, and lastly, crash the boards. And he does that a lot. It's almost a Moussa Diabate type player arc. And so in this example, in pick and roll, I think one thing he can provide is being a lob threat. And so in this example, Hansberry is playing deep drop coverage, and that's just an easy lob ability to Maliq Brown. And so again, pretty similar example. Pick and roll, we start off with a Gortat screen, but Cam Boozer isn't able to finish at the rim, and so they get into some quick drag action, really simple. And then Vassar, again, playing drop coverage, has to help on Dame Sarr, and then easy lob to Maliq. Again, something consistent. I like these brush screens, that I like to call them, where he really isn't having any contact. It's not really a ghost screen because it's more of him setting. It's not him slipping and going to the top of the key. He really is rolling, but it's more of a brush screen. And so in this example, strong off two and finishes. But then there are going to be times that I think I include some clips later on in this film where he just isn't active and isn't strong and patient at the rim. Again, something that Maliq Brown loves to do is that power dribble, gets it to Pat Ngangba, easy dish off. I will say one thing to note, a lot of the times, I know I only included one of them, and I know this is the first game of the year against Texas, but something worthy to note is that frequently he has these illegal screens. As I don't know how many of y'all are caught up on the NCAA basketball rulebook, but his legs are much farther apart than his shoulders, and so this is going to be an illegal screen. Should be called every time. The ref does a good job at calling it, and that's a turnover. And he does that at a pretty, consistent level. Not every possession, obviously. He does set good screens, but sometimes he tries to do something a little sneaky. Shooting is something that, in my eyes, not a great shooter. You can't leave him wide open. But, this is just a simple catch and shoot shot. Off, it's completely off. It hits like the left of the rim, so it's not even on target. Not a great shot attempt, but I will say there are going to be times where it's a simple catch and shoot where he can't hit those. So right here, Vassar doesn't really trust it, more of a dare shot, I would say. And so that's an easy catch and shoot opportunity for Maliq. And something that I think with shooting coaches, he can do a pretty solid job at, stretching the floor if needed. I've got one attacking closeout situation. This is really simple off of a pick and roll. And so changes direction, again, off to finish, solid. And, shout out to the Duke coaches that did a really great job developing Maliq Brown into more of an offensive talent. I know 5 points per game might not be anything crazy, and, he is definitely a role player, but Much better than a guy that's strictly defense and can't do anything on offense, obviously. Post work, I will say he's pretty strong, but sometimes he doesn't do a great job at finishing through contact. This example against Sanandra Frew misses the shot attempt. In my eyes, if we're talking about Maliq Brown offensively, how he can contribute, I think simply like this, really, really simple, where he can just space out in the dunker and just easy lobs. And in this example, kind of running, some 2-3 zone, I will say. So obviously it's really, really easy to get those lob attempts, but consistently all I want for Maliq, in my eyes, how he would fit a offense is, working out in the dunker. This example, not zone this time. We got Ali Khalifa guarding him, number 15, we see right here. And Maliq Brown, solid dunker, but then there are times like this where he just doesn't have great hands and turns the ball over. We're going to have 3 offensive rebound clips because I think this is really the part of his game that you're going to get the most out of. This is just simply crashing the boards. And I will say, not a great fight block out by Louisville. I think that's Adrian Woolley, but simply a stronger guy that can just finish. Good crash and solid putback. This is going to be another example. Good fight. The ball kind of lands to him. Times those putbacks through contact, he struggles significantly. But I will say, just a simple fight. Got a long wingspan to get the board. Kicks out for an assist. You love to see it. And then one last thing. A lot of cutting from Maliq Brown. We see right here, he's in the short corner. And simply just lob threat. Love to see it in Maliq Brown. I know that's probably one of the shortest offensive breakdowns that we've done, but to be honest, there's a reason why, and that's because Maliq Brown is simply a defender. The stats show that he's, an elite defender, and I will say, great effort defensively. He, I believe, had the best at defensive box plus minus, the best defensive rating individually. So statistically, he's a really, really good defender. And talking about his strengths, I think he has great instincts and awareness to force turnovers. He had 67 steals, which was 29th in D1, along with 24 blocks. Those steals are really impressive, especially for a big compared to, guards. Got, secondly, elite quickness, especially when he's blitzing and pick and roll. And so I think, in my eyes, there aren't a ton of forwards that do a better job than Maliq at blitzing and pick and roll. Got a couple examples for you there. In help defense, he's able to read the floor quite well. And then lastly, he can be really, really physical on the ball. Ability to create a ton of pressure, which kind of connects to the fact that he had a ton of turnovers, 67 steals, and 24 blocks. Weaknesses, though, I will say, I don't know if the stats tell the full story, and I'll explain why. Talking about his weaknesses, in my eyes, I hate to say it, but he kind of seems like a slight undisciplined defender. And I hate to say it because he's a great defender, but sometimes he seems a little undisciplined. He forces turnovers, but also will gamble and get behind the play. Secondly, he gets in a lot of foul trouble, 103 fouls over the whole year, which is a ton. And then he sometimes feels, in my eyes, too weak to guard the post, which is unfortunate because if you're a big and you're not really laterally quick enough to consistently guard on the ball against a 1, 2, or 3, you're going to have to play some post defense. And I just can't imagine Maliq Brown doing a good job at all guarding post players like a Nikola Jokic. I just see him getting completely embarrassed because of the fact that he's a little too weak. And that can be shown by the fact that he was in the 6th percentile in post defense, which is abysmal for a big. Lastly, I know I just addressed it, but just a lack of overall lateral quickness guarding the ball, and then that can kind of attest to my offensive weakness that sometimes he's slow up and down the court. We will start off like we do in a lot of these analyses defensively, talking about on ball. And I think the effort is consistently there. In a huge rivalry with 5 minutes left in between Duke and North Carolina, he's guarding Vassar, simply quick swipe, and the fact that he consistently dives on the floor is just such an elite, intangible thing that he just consistently does. But I will say, then there are times like this where, he's guarding Boogie Flan, so a guard, and, tries to gamble, get a steal, and then obviously any attacking closeout situation, when you see a gamble like this and an image where the feet are planted of your defender this far wide, simple attacking closeout, drive to the rim, and then he's now behind the play. Another on-ball example, I really love the pressure, and he does a really, really good job, pressuring, but he doesn't really have that body between where, he's, truly in front of, the Boston College player. And so we see pressuring, swiping at the ball, but then eventually gets beat simply and then swipes, and that's a foul. And I've had 2 or 3 more of these clips where, he swipes late at the end because of, that disciplinedness, I will be completely honest. And so I didn't include it fully. I only included that one clip, but just picture there are a ton of times where he gets those unnecessary fouls, especially at some crucial, parts of the game. This example is going to be NC State towards the end of the year, and I will say he does have some length, so when he's guarding a ball, he can get a really, really easy contest. He doesn't have to be so far close up. He's about a foot or 2 behind the 3-point line, and so, in a step back like this, pretty bad shot attempt. Obviously, we can see NC State didn't do so well against Duke that game, but Maliq Brown does a solid job with that length that he can provide, especially against guards. Post defense is another thing I want to address, and I will be completely honest, a guy like Terrace Reed is just so dominant that there aren't a ton of players that can guard a guy like Terrace Reed. But something to note is that I will say Maliq Brown has a great, posture. He's low, his feet are wide. It's a really, really strong. He stays in front, but it just, again, shows the lack of strength that it seems like he has in post defense, where even he does everything all so right and then just can't finish, the play. This example is against Zuby Ejiofor. I've addressed it. Zuby's a really, really solid player in my opinion. I think he's a little bit better than Maliq Brown. Talking about the fight though, one-on-one in the post. Again, stays low and fights. And right here, we see he gets a contest and is able to force, not a high attempt shot. And so in this, the real thing I'm trying to teach you is the stance and the fight. As I've always said, if you're in the post, all I want you to do is get your elbow into the body of, the guy you're guarding, and that's all you can really ask for. But it's kind of consistently, as I've said, he's just consistently bullied. And it's, as I've said plenty of times, unfortunate because he's a really, really solid defender and is able to force a ton of turnovers. But a forward that can't guard the post and is a little too weak for the post is just an extreme concern consistently. This example against Caleb Wilson, in my eyes, one of my favorite, if not my number one prospect. I will talk about that later when I make a full analysis on him. But post defense against Caleb Wilson, high NBA quality talent, and he fights but falls for a fake simple step through from Caleb Wilson. And I think forwards that are more offensively dominant, it's really, really easy for them to consistently do that when they're athletic enough. This is going to be one of my last examples of post defense. And in this example, we see against Henry Vassar, again, another NBA prospect. Right here, he's swiping and then forces a pickup, and that late pickup results in a turnover. And I love that physicality that he has. I just would love if that physicality is more consistent. And I think this is a good picture. Right here, we see it's going to be a quick swipe at the ball, and that quick swipe forces Vassar to get a drop step, and then he's in an uncomfortable situation where he forces that travel and turnover. Maliq Brown, one last example of post defense. We started right there. It was in some dribble handoff where he blitzed the screen, and similar to the last play, it's a simple post tough catch, and that post and that poke can result in a quick turnover. Love to see it for Maliq. This final example of post defense against Stanford is just simply that he gets sealed. Little unfortunate, but the fact that these are, obviously he's got an inch or two on Maliq, and the fact that he's, an undersized 5 and a 4 that's a little weak can result in, examples like this where simply he's not really trying to push the Stanford big out of the paint. And so simply as, we get into, close to the paint, simple seal and then bounce pass into a right hook. Pick and roll defense, in my eyes, if you're drafting Maliq Brown, I will say the fact that one thing you love to get out of him is the ability to blitz. And as I mean blitzing, if you aren't 100% sure, blitzing a ball screen is when the big that's guarding the roll man decides to almost double and forces usually a retreat dribble by the ball handler. And as a result, this guy's going to have to roll, and consequently, one of these two guys, or one of these three guys, depending on the scenario, are going to tag the roll man, which is just like pushing away. And so I think it offers a ton of pressure, and it leads to a lot of turnovers. In this example against Pitt, really, really simple turnover. He swipes at the ball and then gets a great turnover. And so I think that ability to blitz allows a lot of versatility. In this example, again, a blitz, but unfortunately it's a slight slow recovery in my eyes. If you're going to blitz in this example where he does, it's not probably the most effective blitz. You want it more forward, not east-west. You want it more north-south. And so instead of going north-south, kind of lets Wooly get an easy C pass, which in my eyes I call a C pass when you're in pick and roll and you pass the guy that you can see. So a little C pass to McNeely, and then Maliq Brown unfortunately just has a pretty slow recovery in my eyes and gets a late contest, a little lazy. I know that Ali Khalifa isn't an elite 3-point shooter, but I just want a little bit more effort, and it shows that sometimes, frequently, a little lack of urgency, especially when recovering in pick and roll. This is going to be again another example pretty similar to the Pitt example, this one against UNC. Again, blue blood rivalry, and I want something to note. If you're a guy that simply just loves watching basketball, or if you're a big that plays basketball, if you're going to be blitzing screens like Maliq Brown does in this example, what you want to do is attack the hip of the ball handler. And what I mean by that is I want you to attack this guy's hip right here and just continue to see it. You see he attacks his hip with his feet. And so we see it's just a quick jump from here to basically here, attacks that hip, and then gets a poke and a turnover. And I think that consistency that he has when blitzing is really, really, really impressive. This example against Georgia Tech, really, really strong base, low to the ground at the end of the play. But talking about pick and roll defense, it's you can call it a soft hedge almost. He doesn't fully blitz. He kind of just plays at the level of the screener. So in my eyes, more of a high drop coverage. So he does that quick hedge, then gets back to his man, and that good retreat results in him having a low base, and then get some help from his buddy Cam Boozer to force a turnover. Dribble handoffs, one example we've got right here, where we see he's at the low man and then doesn't do a good job at warring through the screen. And so I know it probably isn't a great job by Ngangba or Nick Kaminya, where they're not switching or communicating. But in this example, if you are going to lack communication and you don't talk, you should try to war through the screen. And so in this example, he doesn't war, he doesn't try to blow up the screen. And so this is just a simple dribble handoff situation. And instead of Maliq Brown trying to fight through it, he kind of just lackadaisically lets McNeely, one of the most premier shooters in college basketball, especially in the ACC, to get a quite easy 3-point attempt. Off ball, I've got two examples. This first one is going to be talking about gambling. We see he's, in the gaps, and kind of results in getting behind the play because of that gamble. I know you will say, hey Matthew, I know they're up by 40 points. It doesn't matter, but it's still something worthy to note that, in the gaps we see right here, Maliq Brown tries to quickly swipe at the ball, but as a result, he kind of gambles, especially when returning. And so when he gambles, he's just a little late behind the play and then get an easy, bucket. This is a and one, I believe. Kind of contributes everything together about his weaknesses. Simply is, sometimes gambles, sometimes as a result gets behind the play, lack of physicality, and then gets just, unfortunately, a bad turnover when he could simply just try to be, more disciplined at the rim. Off ball, this is just lazy in my eyes. Duke is up 3 points with 1 minute and 40 seconds left. Henry Vassar at a point was shooting at a 50% clip, I'm pretty sure, halfway through ACC play. And at this point, they're running some stack, that's just simply if it's an elbow horns action, but the two guys at the elbow, set a screen for each other. And so Vassar gets, a catch at the, upper quad, and Maliq Brown just lacks urgency, is a little lazy, and lets Vassar get a quick 3-point attempt. And for a guy that is not a bad shooter whatsoever, I just hate to see that. I'll be completely upfront. Last 3 examples we will address: help defense. Help defense all you want for a guy like Maliq Brown. Be a low man, just stay vertical. In this example, good hands, we see guarding Ali Khalifa, and then just good hands, jumps at the pass of Woolley, and that's an easy turnover consistently that he gets, those high, volume of steals. Smart rotation by Maliq Brown. I know I addressed this the whole time, although it ends in a Trevon Brazile putback dunk. The thing to note here is the good rotational awareness by Maliq Brown. We see right here, he's the low man, and as we see, Isaiah Evans jumps at the ball, and so obviously it's going to be an attacking closeout, and so it's going to be a rotate right here. Dame Sarr picks up, Caleb Foster picks up his man, Darius Acuff, and so really good situational awareness by Maliq Brown. As he's the low man, he's going to just simply pick up Caleb Foster's man, and so really solid situational awareness. Gets a late contest, solid contest. Unfortunately though, they're just kind of out of sorts. Cam Boozer and Dame Sarr decide to block out the same person, and as a result, Brazile can just crash and get an easy offensive rebound. I'll say, unfortunately, Cam Boozer, not a great defensive play for him, but a great defensive play for Maliq Brown. We see right here, low man again, good awareness to pick up, stays up the floor. And I've just said consistently, if you're the low man, you got to have good situational awareness, and Maliq Brown does. And so we see low man, great, just little thing he does in the film. We've got a pause, perfect pause. He's pointing at his man. He sees that. Also got his eyes in the pick and roll. And I believe that might be Tice DeRitter. I'm not 100% sure. I believe it is though. Roll man, and then just an easy, good awareness, stays up the floor, forces a turnover, 8 minutes into the game. So looking at Maliq Brown overall, I will say in my eyes, I have a tough time, grading and thinking about him. And it's for a couple reasons. One, I will be upfront, and I think he'd probably be upfront too, that he really isn't a, great offensive player. He doesn't provide a ton. And so the fact that you can't really offer a ton on offense, you're hoping they're going to offer a ton on defense. And statistically, I will say his defensive presence was exciting. I watched a ton of Duke games this year, And, at the end of the year, I looked at the stats, and he was really, really impressive. As I said, highest defensive box plus minus, highest defensive rating. And so it was really, really, really exciting. And so for a guy that's supposed to be first in defensive rating, I feel like he's pretty undisciplined. I know he, gives a ton of turnovers, but I think he benefited from the fact that Duke was such a well-coached defense that it allowed him to be a little undisciplined, but force a lot of turnovers because the four other players on the court with him could, pick up, his slack if he's going to try to gamble. And so I will say he can force a lot of turnovers, but everything else a part of his game worries me. In my eyes, probably a second rounder. I think, personally, he's more close to being undrafted than being a second round guy. I hate to say it, but I wouldn't be surprised if a team would take a flyer on him in the late second round where they see that potential defensive upside. And it's definitely there. But for supposedly the best defensive player in college basketball, I don't think the stats tell the full story of Maliq Brown's game. So I will say thank y'all so much for watching another episode of The Rim Review. If you have any questions on the analysis or suggestions on players you want me to watch, please let me know down below. Until next time, thank you so much for watching.